Good afternoon once again, dear colleagues, and it's good to see you all. Last night we had the unfortunate occasion to experience the accuracy of that old Chinese saying that when the Chinese dragon breathes, the world shakes. Uh, it was it was the strongest earthquake in 10 years of my life in Almaty, and as I mentioned earlier, my colleagues told me earlier today that this could have been the strongest earthquake within the past 30 years. And this is a natural illustration indeed of the influence China has in this region in Central Asia, and also with respect to Kazakhstan. I will take the next few minutes to discuss some ideas about the role of international law in a few sectors or aspects of relations between Kazakhstan and China. But I should make a disclaimer. First, I am not a sinologist, and so I do not speak or read Chinese, and therefore, while preparing for this lecture, I relied predominantly on Kazakhstani sources or on other extra Chinese sources. I have been able, though, to use some Chinese sources written in English, and in that sense, though, those sources are not secondary. They do originate from China, but if my discussion is somewhat one-sided, please accept my apology because I do not speak Chinese. So having said this, uh, let me start with a very general observation that obviously the landscape of international relations is increasingly shaped by strategic partnerships between nations. And among these, the relationship between China and Kazakhstan probably stands out as a significant example of how international law plays an important role in shaping bilateral relations. Situated in Central Asia, Kazakhstan shares with China a long border and is a key player in regional politics and economics. The relations between these two countries are multifaceted. They encompass trade, security, and cultural exchanges, all of these being underpinned by a framework of international law. And it will be these very questions that I will focus on in my presentation within the limited time frame that I have. Let me start with a few sentences on bilateral treaties applicable between China and Kazakhstan, because this is the framework, the normative framework we'll be focusing on. Of course, China and Kazakhstan have a history of engagement dating back to the Silk Road era. However, their modern diplomatic relations were established on the 3rd of January 1992, right after the disintegration of the Soviet Union. And since then, a series of bilateral treaties have been signed, laying the legal groundwork for their cooperation. According to the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan, currently there are at least 68 treaties on various political, economic, cultural, transportation, education, and other matters in force. Perhaps there are more, but the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs lists these 68. And I will be referring to some of them in the next hour or so. One of the cornerstone documents among these is the Treaty on Good Neighborliness, Friendship and Cooperation, made in Beijing on the 23rd of December 2002, so already more than 20 years ago, which epitomizes the principles of mutual respect, sovereignty, and non-interference, which are all key tenets of international law. And this treaty, among others, has facilitated a range of cooperative endeavors, from economic projects to cultural exchanges. Of course, all these treaties have profound impact on bilateral relations between China and Kazakhstan. They do not only provide a legal structure for interaction, but they also foster a sense of stability and predictability in these relations, which are essential for long-term planning and investment. The first key topic that I will focus on in my presentation will be trade and economic cooperation. In this part, I will discuss the role of international law as the backbone of trade and economic cooperation between China and Kazakhstan. The legal frameworks governing international trade, in particular rules set by the World Trade Organization, of which both countries are members, obviously play a crucial role in facilitating smooth trade relations. In the same first part of the lecture, I will focus on the Belt and Road Initiative, which obviously is a central element in China-Kazakhstan economic cooperation. This ambitious infrastructure and trade project initiated by China aims to enhance regional connectivity, and Kazakhstan's strategic location between China and many of its other partners in the West makes it a vital link in the BRI, particularly in terms of overland routes connecting China with Europe and the Middle East. Obviously, the implementation of BRI projects in Kazakhstan operates within the largely within the ambit of international economic law. This involves adhering to international standards and norms in areas such as investment, labor laws, and environmental protection. And in a few moments, I will speak about these in more detail. The Belt and Road Initiative has led to significant infrastructure developments in Kazakhstan, including roads, railways, and ports. And in that sense, it was an important factor in Kazakhstan's development in the recent years. But it also has led to some challenges that I will draw your attention to. The next topic I will discuss will be about border management and security issues. These aspects are critical in China-Kazakhstan relations, and they're also governed by relevant international legal frameworks. The two countries share a long border, not the longest one in the world. By the way, you certainly know that the longest land border in the world is shared by Kazakhstan, but with another country, with Russia. So Kazakhstan's border with China is not the longest, but it's still very long, and it does necessitate functional legal mechanisms for border control and management. The length of the border between China and Kazakhstan is about 1,782 kilometers, including 1,215 kilometers of land border and about 566 kilometers along or across rivers and lakes, which is quite a length. Moreover, the two countries engage in joint security initiatives, such as counter-terrorism efforts within the framework of international law, ensuring that these efforts are conducted in a manner that respects both sovereignty and international norms. After that, respectively in the third and fourth parts of my presentation, I will discuss at some length cooperation between China and Kazakhstan in the areas of culture and education, and I will conclude by a brief overview of the impact of relations between China and Kazakhstan on Russia, which is obviously a significant player in this part of the world. So with your permission, let me now proceed to the first part, which is about economic cooperation between two countries, and more specifically on about the Belt and Road Initiative and its impact on Kazakhstan. So, as is well known, the Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI, was launched in China in 2013, and it aims to enhance global trade and economic integration through infrastructure development and connectivity. The project comprises two main components: the Silk Road economic belt and the 21st century maritime Silk Road, so focusing on connecting Asia with Europe and Africa through respectively land and maritime networks. According to some reports, as of last year, 2023, 155 countries have signed up to this initiative. This is important because the participating countries include almost 75% of the world's population and account for more than half of the world's GDP. So the project is truly grand. Kazakhstan, due to its geographic location, obviously serves as an important link between Asia and Europe. Its geographic location has positioned Kazakhstan as a central player in the Silk Road economic belt, so in the land component of the initiative. Kazakhstan is very proud about its role in the BRI, not only because it's a foreign policy success, but perhaps more importantly, because it's also a catalyst for domestic infrastructure development and economic diversification. So what are some of the key projects in the framework of these initiatives and their outcomes? With respect to transportation and logistics infrastructure, probably the most notable project is the Horgoz Gateway. So located on the Kazakhstan-China border, Horgoz Gateway is a dry port that has become a key logistics hub. It facilitates the transfer of goods between China and Central Asia and then Europe, making it crucial for land-based trade. The next notable project is Western Europe, Western China International Transit Corridor. This project involved the construction of a major highway spanning Kazakhstan, which enhances road connectivity between China and Europe through Kazakhstan. In particular, it included upgrading and reconstruction of road sections of almost 800 kilometers in Kızılorda region, it's towards the south of Kazakhstan, as well as upgrading and reconstruction of road sections of almost 300 kilometers in South Kazakhstan. This highway significantly reduces transit time for goods and bolsters Kazakhstan's position as a transit country. Well, importantly, these projects have not only improved Kazakhstan's logistics capabilities, but also created employment opportunities for local residents and spurred regional economic development. The next important economic sector is certainly the energy sector. So with respect to oil and gas pipelines, Kazakhstan, well, has vast oil and natural gas reserves, and Kazakhstan has been investing in the development of their transit in the past years. The BRI-related investments have led to the development and expansion of pipelines connecting Kazakhstan's oil field to China. In particular, the Kazakhstan-China pipeline, which is owned by the China National Petroleum Corporation and the Kazakh oil company Kazmunaygaz, runs from Kazakhstan's Caspian Shore in the west to Xinjiang in China in the east. Actually, the construction of this pipeline was agreed before the launching of the BRI, already in 1997. But BRI certainly gave an impetus to this project. This project has certainly increased Kazakhstan's export capacities, diversifying its energy export markets beyond Europe and Russia. And it has also brought substantial foreign investment into the country's energy sector. Next, with respect to industrial and technological advancement, first of all, special economic zones should be mentioned. So special economic zones, such as the Horgos Eastern Gate, have been developed in the framework of the BRI, focusing on manufacturing, logistics, and trade. The special economic zone, this one, so the Horgos Eastern Gate, targets in particular the development of transportation infrastructure, food production, textile industry, production of metal, chemical and mineral products, and other sectors. There are very interesting developments concerning technological cooperation, such as technology parks and joint ventures in sectors like telecommunications and e-commerce. For example, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Huawei strategically relocated some of its Moscow office staff to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and now continues positioning itself as a critical player in Kazakhstan's telecommunications sector, interestingly overtaking competitors such as Swedish Ericsson or Finnish Nokia. And obviously, these special economic zones and such collaborations in technology are designed to boost Kazakhstan's industrial base, create jobs, and promote technology transfer and innovation. So to sum up on the BRI, it has been a significant factor in transforming Kazakhstan's economic landscape in the past years. It has facilitated a move away from a predominantly resource-based economy to a more diversified one, with improved infrastructure, with greater regional connectivity. The initiative has increased the amount of foreign direct investment, trade opportunities, and industrial development. On the other hand, with all the successes and advantages related to the BRI, it has also brought some challenges, such as certain dependency on Chinese investments, environmental concerns, and the need for ensuring sustainable and inclusive growth. And in order to make my analysis more complete, let me now say a few words about these challenges and certain criticisms in the implementation of the BRI projects in Kazakhstan. Let us start with impact on local ecosystems. Some BRI projects, particularly infrastructure developments like highways and pipelines, have raised some concerns about their impact on Kazakhstan's diverse ecosystems. Some of the most significant issues here include, for example, the disruption of natural habitats, potential pollution, and strain on water resources. Kazakhstan is already experiencing a deficit of water, and according to ecology activists, this deficit is going to become more acute in the years to come. So therefore, especially the construction of highways under the Western Europe, Western China International Transit Corridor have raised questions about their impact on the fragile steppe ecosystem. The next concern is about sustainable development. Some critics argue that some BRI projects in Kazakhstan may not fully align with sustainable development principles. And for this reason, there is a call for more robust environmental impact assessments and the incorporation of green technologies in these projects in the future. Also, there have been some local community impacts. For example, infrastructure projects have sometimes led to the displacement of local communities, affecting their livelihoods and cultural ties. And in that context, the need for fair compensation and effective resettlement plans is crucial. For example, the expansion of industrial zones and logistics centers like the Horgos Gateway, which I spoke about a few minutes ago, has necessitated the relocation of nearby residents. And The next point is about economic disparities. While the Belt and Road Initiative projects have certainly, and no doubt about that, have certainly brought economic growth to the country, there are also some concerns about unequal distribution of benefits, with some regions or communities gaining more than others. And addressing these disparities is very, very important for social stability, given that now officially more than 1 million Kazakhstani residents are currently living under the poverty line. This concern is very serious. Just recently, Kazakhstan's population has reached the 20 million benchmark, which means that 1 million are as many as 5% of the population of the country. And having 5% of the population living below the poverty line is a very, very serious concern. There are also geopolitical implications of the BRI. Thus, there is a growing debate over Kazakhstan's economic dependency on China. In particular, critics worry that heavy reliance on Chinese investment and markets may limit Kazakhstan's economic sovereignty and bargaining power. And if this concern is correct, then in a perspective, this economic dependency could translate into political leverage for China in matters of regional and international significance. And last but not least, there are regional dynamics. The BRI expansion in Kazakhstan affects regional dynamics, particularly with neighboring countries and major powers like Russia and the European Union. It does raise questions about the shifting balance of power and influence in Central Asia. And an observation which probably needs to be made in this regard is that Kazakhstan must continue navigating its foreign policy very carefully, balancing its relations with China on the one hand and other regional players on the other hand. Since the early years of independence, the official motto of Kazakhstan's foreign policy was multi-vectoralism. So, for the past 30 or more than 30 years, Kazakhstan's foreign policy was multi-vectoral, meaning that the country has been trying to balance its relations with all its major partners without creating an impression that someone is preferred over the others, and therefore the continuation of this policy will be very, very important. So to conclude on the BRI, this initiative has certainly brought significant opportunities for Kazakhstan, but on the other hand, addressing the challenges like those I have mentioned is crucial for ensuring that the benefits of BRI are sustainable, inclusive, and aligned with the country's long-term strategic interests. Now let me say a few words beyond the BRI about economic relations between China and Kazakhstan in specific sectors. For example, with respect to the energy sector, the energy trade between China and Kazakhstan is governed by a series of bilateral agreements, which are framed within the larger context of international energy law. These agreements cover aspects such as investment protection, taxation, and environmental standards. An example could be the China-Kazakhstan oil pipeline agreement, which includes provisions for investment security and dispute resolution. With respect to the extraction of minerals, international law provides a framework for protecting investments in this sector. This includes agreements on non-expropriation, on fair and equitable treatment, and mechanisms for dispute resolution. And this legal framework is significant because it encourages foreign investment by providing a degree of security and predictability for Chinese investors in Kazakhstan's mineral industries. With respect to the agriculture sector, for example, the so-called sanitary and phytosanitary measures, or SPS, these regulations are set by the World Trade Organization, and they govern the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures in agricultural trade. These measures are important for protecting human, animal, or plant life or health. With respect, but in particular, to economic and trade relations between China and Kazakhstan, these regulations ensure that agricultural products traded between the two countries meet the health and safety standards and foster trade, trust and quality in their agricultural trade relations. Next, with respect to intellectual property rights, which covers patents, trademarks, and affects the trade of agricultural products, especially those involving genetically modified organisms or unique agricultural technologies. So these help protect the rights of innovators and researchers in the agricultural sector and encourage innovation and fair competition. So to conclude briefly on this, international law also plays a role in shaping trade relations between China and Kazakhstan outside the Belt and Road Initiative, particularly in the energy, minerals, and agriculture sectors. And by providing a legal framework for investment protection, regulatory compliance, trade facilitation, and intellectual property rights, international law facilitates a stable and mutually beneficial trade environment for both countries. Now, with your permission, let me move to the second part of my presentation, that is border management and security issues between China and Kazakhstan. In this part, I will discuss bilateral relations between the two countries in these sectors, as well as the role of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in these processes. So there is a bilateral aspect as well as a multilateral aspect to this matter. As I said earlier, the border between China and Kazakhstan extends over 1,700 kilometers and traverses a range of challenging terrains from mountains to deserts. This extensive shared border presents unique management and security challenges, which necessitate robust cooperation guided by international law principles. And issues involved here range from illegal crossings and smuggling to more complex security threats like terrorism and organized crime. And I will discuss these in the next few minutes. So with respect to illegal trafficking and smuggling, both countries have sought to strengthen their border controls and surveillance in order to curb these activities. In particular, there are joint border patrols and there is information sharing, which are part of the collaborative efforts and are grounded in bilateral agreements and international security protocols. With respect to migration and refugee movements, there is some geopolitical instability in the region, which can lead to migration pressures. And managing these movements while respecting rules of international human rights law, in particular the rights of refugees and asylum seekers, poses a significant challenge. Especially in relations between China and Kazakhstan, one very pressing and delicate issue is the situation of Muslims in the west of China, and especially those Muslims who apply for asylum or refuge in Kazakhstan. There have been cases like this in the past years, and in the most of these cases, Kazakhstan rejected applications for asylum or refuge. Well, probably not to irritate China. And there are mixed reactions about this within Kazakhstani society. Uh, especially human rights defenders, well, they speak a lot about this, and they say that Kazakhstan should be more proactive in receiving applicants from coming from China. Kazakhstan should be more proactive in granting asylum and refuge to such applicants. But the government pursues its line of multi-vectoral foreign policy. And as I said, many of these applications have been rejected in the past years. Next, with respect to security issues, I'd like to single out two aspects here. First, counter-terrorism efforts. The threat of terrorism is a major concern, with both China and Kazakhstan being targets of extremist groups. And therefore, collaborative counter-terrorism efforts are crucial for regional stability. These efforts are conducted within the framework of relevant treaties, in particular, bilateral agreements on security cooperation. And next, with respect to organized crime and corruption, organized crime, which includes human trafficking and corruption at border checkpoints, is a challenge that undermines the security and integrity of both nations. And initiatives to counter this problem include the establishment of cross-border crime-fighting units and the implementation of anti-corruption measures in line with international legal standards. And especially with respect to anti-corruption measures, I must say Kazakhstan has been showing some progress in the past 10 years or so. You may know that at the very end of 2014, Kazakhstan adopted an anti-corruption strategy for the next 10 years, so from 2015 until 2025. Well, now there are almost 2 years left until the expiry of this strategy, and it could be a good time to make some preliminary assessment of success of this strategy. And I must say that there have been quite successes. For example, in the past 8 years, Kazakhstan climbed 24 to 25 positions up in the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, which is quite good. Kazakhstan is a regional leader in Central Asia in countering corruption, and officially, so according to some official pronouncements, Kazakhstan is learning in its anti-corruption efforts from some of the more successful countries, including China and also Singapore. So the next issue concerning so in the area of security is about modernization of border infrastructure. The two countries are investing in modern border infrastructure, such as advanced surveillance systems and biometric checkpoints, in order to make their border management more effective. This certainly involves information sharing and technology use, because the use of technology and information sharing between border control agencies play a critical role in addressing various security threats. So to conclude on bilateral cooperation, these are some of the joint efforts that two countries are making in order to curb security threats which exist in the region, while doing their best to respect human rights and relevant rules of international law. Now let me say a few words about the multilateral aspect of this process. That is about the role of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the maintenance of regional security. So, as you know, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a platform which was established in 2001. And now the SCO primarily focuses on security-related concerns, but also increasingly embraces economic and cultural cooperation. And collaboration between China and Kazakhstan within this framework are important, given their strategic locations and roles in the region. So with respect to counterterrorism, the primary focus of the SCO is on combating three isms: terrorism, separatism, and extremism. And China and Kazakhstan actively participate in joint counter-terrorism exercises under the SCO framework, such as the Peace Mission series of military drills. With respect to intelligence sharing and law enforcement, the SCO does facilitate intelligence sharing and law enforcement cooperation between its member states, and China and Kazakhstan work together within this framework to tackle international crime, drug trafficking, and significantly cyber threats. With respect to regional economic integration, the SCO does provide a platform for China and Kazakhstan to discuss and implement policies promoting such economic integration. This includes deliberations on trade agreements, customs cooperation, and transportation connectivity. And last but not least, there is a cultural and humanitarian component to these processes. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization encourages cultural exchanges among its members, and both China and Kazakhstan participate in various cultural events like festivals and exhibitions under the SCO umbrella. For example, last year, India hosted a global Buddhist summit, and some events leading to the summit were held under the auspices of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where India was the chair at the time. With respect to educational and scientific cooperation, the SCO promotes cooperation in education and science, including student exchange programs, joint research projects, and academic conferences. And this collaboration is crucial for building intellectual and cultural bridges between China and Kazakhstan. And now let me say a few more words specifically on this topic, because bilateral cooperation between China and Kazakhstan in matters of education and culture is very, very interesting, and it's good to know. So with respect to education, the two countries have a number of educational programs for students at various levels. And now, after the pandemic, about 15,000 Kazakhstani students are reported to study in China. They say that there are about 1,300 Chinese students studying in Kazakhstan, facilitated by scholarship programs and educational agreements. And so these programs and educational agreements focus on two aspects. On the one hand, linguistic education, that is the studying of Chinese, or respectively of Chinese and Kazakh languages, and on the other hand, other subject areas. Well, obviously, these exchanges promote mutual understanding and help in developing a workforce which is who are familiar with both cultures and thus benefit future bilateral relations. With respect to joint academic and research initiatives, universities from both countries collaborate on research projects, academic conferences, and seminars, and subjects range from regional studies and language programs to more elevated scientific research. For example, at KIMEP University, where I work, there is a Kazakhstan-China Research Center, and we are now looking towards um, expanding our collaborations and establishing ideally dual degrees with some Chinese universities. With respect specifically to language and culture studies, there are 5 Confucius Institutes in Kazakhstan and a few Kazakh language centers in China. And these play important roles for developing cultural understanding and in aiding diplomatic and business interactions between the two nations. There are also regular cultural festivals, art exhibitions, and performances showcasing each country's heritage and traditions. For example, this year, 2024, was announced as the year of Kazakhstan's tourism in China, and hopefully it should be significant in showcasing diverse cultural aspects. With respect to the preservation of shared heritage, there are interesting joint initiatives. For example, as reported by Xinhua, in recent years, a number of Chinese scholars have set out from Xi'an to explore the cultural relics of the ancient Silk Road, together with scholars from countries along the Belt and Road. More specifically, since 2017, the Shaanxi Academy of Archaeology and the State Historical Museum Reserve ISIK from Kazakhstan have formed a joint archaeological team to carry out archaeological investigations and excavations. And I find this shared history is a beautiful bridge connecting the two countries, and it does emphasize the historical and cultural linkages. And as I'm approaching the end of my presentation, let me say a few words on the impact of Kazakhstan on relations between no impact of China, so on relations between Kazakhstan and Russia, because these are important regional dynamics, and the quality of relations between Kazakhstan and China will certainly have an effect for relations between Kazakhstan and Russia, and also the quality of relations between Russia and China will be important for Central Asia as a whole. Well, obviously, the China-Russia partnership, often aligned on security issues, does contribute to regional stability, which is beneficial for Kazakhstan. However, it also places Kazakhstan in a delicate position where it must balance its ties with both nations without appearing to favor one over the other, as I discussed some time before, in accordance with the philosophy of multi-vectoral foreign policy. For example, joint military exercises involving China and Russia in the region, such as the Northern Interaction 2023, which took place near Japan, can be seen as a stabilizing force, but they also raise concern about Kazakhstan's strategic autonomy. With respect to economic opportunities, a strong China-Russia relationship can lead to increased economic opportunities for Kazakhstan, especially in terms of trade and energy. Kazakhstan can benefit from being a transit corridor and an energy supplier within the integrated economic space that these two larger economies create. However, there is also a challenge, which implies that Kazakhstan's economy may become increasingly dependent on the economic dynamics and politics and policies of China and Russia. With respect to cultural and diplomatic aspects, well, Kazakhstan must continuously balance its diplomatic relations with both China and Russia. This balancing process is crucial in international platforms and in the regional organizations they're part of, like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And strategically, so successfully navigating this balance allows Kazakhstan to leverage its unique position and maintain a degree of autonomy in its foreign policy. And this is very important. I would say it's existentially important for Kazakhstan at the present stage, because as you certainly know, there are some Russian politicians who repeatedly make hints or should I say concealed threats against Kazakhstan. They say in particular that Kazakhstan got its territory from Russia as a gift, and in some time gifts could be reclaimed. Also, a few months ago, on the other hand, uh, the Chinese ambassador to France made a statement to the effect that some post-Soviet nations were not really sovereign, and there were there were debates about that. Uh, After that, the Chinese president made a comment to the effect that China would help secure and protect the sovereignty of Kazakhstan should a threat to it emerge. And I guess this is an important reassurance, a signal that certainly must have been heard in Moscow and elsewhere. And so to conclude on this brief topic, the relationship between China and Russia has a multifaceted impact on Kazakhstan. While it presents opportunities for economic growth and regional stability, it also requires Kazakhstan to skillfully manage its foreign policy and economic strategies. And navigating these complex relations is key to Kazakhstan's pursuit of its national interests and maintaining its sovereignty and strategic autonomy in a region which is influenced in the north by the Russian bear and in the east by the Chinese dragon. Let me stop here, dear colleagues.